Hello everyone. First of all, when I was 18, 5 years ago, my parents asked me to move out of the house and kicked me out because they thought it was more necessary for my sister's boyfriend to move in with her. I'm a 23-year-old woman with an elder sister named Chloe, who is 4 years my senior. After getting pregnant at the age of 22, Chloe had to move back in with us. Although she had been working for a few months, she didn't have enough money saved to support herself and the child simultaneously. After returning home, she decided that it would be best for her boyfriend to move in with her after 3 months of being pregnant. She believed that the baby's father needed to be present for the child to grow properly. Never mind, I won't even answer that. Though our house wasn't that big, and I wasn't sure if it could fit all of us, I felt that it was a bit of an unfair demand given that she was living with it. Otherwise, I wouldn't have had any problems. My parents were genuinely going to agree with her and kick me out, instead of declining and refusing to let her move in with her lover, as I had first assumed. My parents informed me a few months after Chloe moved in that they intended to move her boyfriend as well, which meant I would have to give up my room. I was surprised because I hadn't anticipated it at all, and I asked foolishly where I would be staying in the house. At that point, my parents made it clear that they wanted me to move out of the house completely, since at 18, it was time for me to depart. That was out of the question, because I had made the decision to take a gap year instead of attending college. Aside from that, I could have moved in with my friends or grandparents, but I didn't see why I was required to leave my home at all, not just for my sisters, but also for me. Neither could she do as she pleased just because she was expecting a child. My parents also had to concur. When I attempted to argue with them, my parents intervened, telling me I was an adult. My sister was pregnant and wanted her partner at her side, so I had no reason to feel entitled to live with them anymore. I had to face life on my own. They informed me it was not possible since she wanted her own space, even though I tried to explain that she could share her room with her partner. Her room was small enough as it was, and she didn't want her boyfriend moving in with her because that would just make it more claustrophobic as she grew larger. I proposed that he could reside in the living room, but it turned out that residing in the living room was not an option because her boyfriend had a back injury. Maybe I could live in the living room instead, I said, wanting to stay put at the moment. However, they informed me that it was kind of unsightly for someone to stay in the living room and that they thus wanted me to go. They simply weren't prepared to listen to me. And then I realized that what they really wanted was for me to go. I believed my sister was being irrational and entitled, but I also blame my parents for the way they were treating me. She was not only interested in moving in with us, but she also insisted on having her partner have his own room. So even if I wasn't ready, I would have to leave. The day I was instructed to leave, I got into a heated argument with my family because I felt horrible about it. They were all described as terrible individuals, and I felt embarrassed to even be related to them. I labeled them all selfish and declared that I never wanted to see them again. After that, I packed up everything I had and gave a few friends a call to ask for help moving out. In the upcoming 3 days, my mom's parents were hesitant to let me live with them. But I don't really blame them because my grandfather had always been quite ill and my grandma had her hands full trying to take care of him. I have spoken to my grandparents about this. I made the decision to move live with my paternal grandparents, who were furious when they learned why I had to leave my parents' home. They also genuinely expressed their disapproval to my parents, and after that, they completely stopped talking to them. Despite the support of my grandparents and friends, I was deeply depressed. I didn't understand why my parents and sister were treating me this way, when I had always felt that I had a nice relationship with them. But I started to understand it all. My sister wrote me a letter the day after I departed via one of her friends. That letter was so strange that I still carry it with me. However, the letter claimed that her lover was the reason she had persuaded our parents to have me move out of the house. It seems they haven't exactly been in a committed relationship according to her, and he was a flirt. They didn't formally start dating until after she became aware that she was expecting, and she was worried that he could still be unsure about the relationship. She claimed that she had to struggle mightily to win his consent to move in with her and share parental responsibilities for the child. Because having another lady in the house would jeopardize everything, she did not want her there. Chloe was clearly very insecure and didn't trust this man, so I couldn't even begin to understand why she was willing to have a baby with him. It was also absurd that she felt the need to get me to leave the house in order to prevent her boyfriend from flirting or hooking up with me. I was about to send her a text saying that she was obviously not thinking straight and that it was pitiful that she was still attempting to remain with this man and even have his baby. So I chose to remain silent. I also wanted nothing to do with her or my family again, since I felt that being with a man like this was punishment enough for her. She had no dignity or self-respect, and my parents made it very evident to me where I stood with them since they were so easily swayed by my sister. I concluded that the wisest course of action in this case would be to avoid speaking with them. I then made an effort to try and move on with my life. Since I had never really been academically inclined, I made the decision to take a year out from school to reflect on my true life goals. I know that seems weird, but I never felt that kind of lifestyle would be right for me. I did not want a conventional 9-to-5 work. I am an independent musician. I was really proficient at playing the drums and guitar, and I've been playing since I was 12. I also came to the realization that this was what I wanted to accomplish with my life during my gap year. I understood that becoming a musician would not bring in a lot of money, but all I really wanted was to be happy. Therefore, that was all I wanted. And I considered the possibility that I might succeed in life at some point. I had no idea that it would truly come to pass at the moment. At least somewhat, anyway. At first, I was only scheduling part-time jobs, and money was tight. It took me a very long time to be able to afford an apartment. And even then, it was a very small one that I had to share with a roommate. I was quite dependent on my grandparents for financial support. I continued to receive somewhat more serious gigs after that, until I went in for an audition to work with a music producer at the start of this year. I got the job, and I won't be taking names. I'll be contributing a few songs and the guitar to a movie, and I'll be paid a pretty good price for it. I've moved into a better apartment and have already received some money towards that. The whole amount will be given to me once the task is completed. I believe that with my resume, I will be receiving even more job after this. I don't know who spoke out of town, but my parents managed to find out about it. The only people who knew about it were my grandparents and a few of my pals. I don't want to talk about any of this too soon, so I haven't even shared anything on social media yet. In the business, nothing is truly permanent. Nevertheless, my relatives managed to learn where I lived 2 days earlier. They materialized at my door. Given that I'm currently doing well in life and that both of my parents have retired, it's obvious that they needed my assistance in supporting my sister and her child. When they arrived, I did not extend an invitation for them to enter. I was too shocked to move other than to gaze. In any case, they congratulated me and stated they were coming to make things right with me, not because we were family, but also because they needed my help, since I was unable to talk with them. Chloe's boyfriend dumped her 2 years ago. So when they learned that I was contributing to the movie music as a guitarist, they felt they had to get in contact with me because it's such a big deal. They also informed me that my parents had retired last year and that Chloe was finding it difficult to maintain the business she had started after her lover left. They were now depending on me to stand up and support my sister. Although it had been a while since we had spoken, they told me they hoped I wouldn't send them away since, despite everything that had happened, we were still family. Therefore, we had to support one another, above everything else. That was really ridiculous to me because they had not supported me in any way, and they had actually done everything within their power to ensure that they would not need to support me in the future. They were only present because my sister had no one to turn to after her boyfriend broke up with her. It seemed that she was receiving child support, but even that was struggling at the moment. My sister had been running a flower shop with her friends since the birth of her child. So even that was not going to be enough in the future. They had thus come to me for assistance. However, the irony of the scenario made me laugh out loud in their faces, especially since I was reminded of the letter my sister had sent to me the day after I had gone. She had opted for her partner over a positive relationship with me, while knowing all along that she wasn't sure of her relationship with him. And now, notice where that got her. So I told them to wait outside and I walked back inside my house. I found the letter I had stored away, gave it back to the writer, and instructed her to read it aloud to our parents so they would understand exactly why I had been expelled all those years ago. When Chloe saw that, she flushed and wouldn't read it aloud. I then returned it to her and read it aloud. After I was finished, my parents understood they had been duped and that they were so weak-willed that they couldn't even distinguish right from wrong. They looked surprised and humiliated at the same moment. They are primarily angry with Chloe, since it seems like she knew all along that he wasn't the proper guy and still chose to believe in him. By doing this, she not only ruined her chances of having a safe and secure future, but she also put our parents in a tough situation because they were now forced to provide for her. After reading that letter, none of them knew what to say. I simply informed them that they deserved everything that was occurring to them at the moment, especially Chloe, who had opted to give up everything for a man she knew wasn't the appropriate kind of person despite knowing this. I felt no need to assist her at this time because it was her fault. When I replied that, she broke down in tears and told me that she had wanted to make things work with him since she was in love with him and had expected me to be a little more understanding. Because she didn't want him to be tempted by anyone else, she simply didn't want to take any chances and understood that having me around would cause problems. She was willing to acknowledge that she hadn't been acting rationally, but that was only because she was expecting a child. She wanted to do everything in her power to ensure that her boyfriend stayed with her and didn't desert her and their child, so it seemed insensitive of me to hold her responsible for the predicament she found herself in at the moment. I told them to leave after slamming the door shut because I had nothing more to say about it. Her friends have messaged me numerous times since, claiming that I was extremely insensitive and that she hasn't stopped sobbing since I told her that she was to blame for everything. I had to ask now, though. I'm glad I told my sister that her boyfriend's abandonment of her and their child was her own responsibility. Update once I've reached a decision. I will not be expressing regret for anything I have stated. I was attempting to portray the situation as relatively regular, but the comments made me understand that Chloe had done something quite odd. It was strange and pitiful, and to be honest, she deserved it. It's not as though I said anything improper. Furthermore, she is mistaken if she believes that after telling me via text that I'm insensitive for what I said, her friends would text her and I'll apologize. She must understand that it took someone to correct her and that someone had to be me. After all that occurred to me due of her, she still had the gall to come over to my house and beg for assistance. Naturally, I don't put all the blame on her. Though my parents shared equal responsibility, the whole thing could have been avoided if she had used some common sense. I won't give a single dollar to someone who doesn't deserve it because I had to work so hard to reach where I am. Even if her business is struggling, in my perspective, she still has it at least. She can take advantage of the circumstances. She doesn't have to behave like a helpless victim. My sister and dad in particular have always seemed to think that they should always be succeeding, even when they are going through a difficult time, in my opinion. They become crazy and act as though they will lose everything the following day. They, in my opinion, have no battling spirit at all, and I'm happy that I'm not one of them. I mention this because I recall, even in middle school, that my dad suffered a job loss due to an unspecified difficulty at the company he worked for. Nevertheless, my dad had to borrow a significant amount of money from our grandparents after everyone in my family lost their minds. To be clear, my mother was working at the time, and my parents had their own savings, so there was no need to freak out. Yes, although I'm not sure why they did that. The absurd thing is that they never even bothered to give back the borrowed funds. Since they were only receiving it from my grandparents, I suppose they didn't take it seriously. And it appears like they are repeating the same action. This time, though, the victim is my sister's company. But I don't feel obligated to assist her, unlike my grandparents. I'm honestly not interested in helping, so she can either handle it on her own or ask someone else. Second update. Following my family's visit to my house last week, Chloe's pals began bombarding me with texts, claiming that I had been insensitive and that I ought to make amends with her. Naturally, I didn't for the next few days. In addition to being quite busy at work, I hadn't spoken to them. I had other jobs still. I got back home last night at around 10 o'clock, and I was really worn out. However, my folks chose to give me a call at precisely that same moment. Their phone was a burner. I suppose I was unable to identify the number. When I answered the phone, thinking it was a work-related call, my parents informed me that they had given it some thought and had made the decision to separate from my sister. It was so unexpected and came as a complete surprise that I was at a loss for words. Furthermore, I didn't realize my parents would benefit from severing my sister from their lives, since I had imagined it was Chloe who required my assistance rather than me. In any case, I informed them that it was wonderful news, but even at that point, I didn't want to interact with them due to the unpleasantness of their previous treatment of me. I couldn't forgive and move on from it so quickly. Although I'm aware it is not exactly so soon, it made no difference. All I wanted to do was avoid talking to my folks. I didn't think someone in my situation would ever be able to move on from what had happened, and I was content enough with my life despite not being in contact with my family. It definitely would have been easier for me to accept if we had a strained relationship from the start, and they had kicked me out when I reached 18. But I was so shocked by it all that I was unable to process it emotionally for a very long time, and I don't want them back in my life now that I've finally come to terms with it. I told them that very clearly. I informed them that I was not bothered by their relationship with Chloe since I had made up my mind not to get involved with them in any way. My mother interrupted me as I was about to hang up, telling me that since they had fulfilled my request, I ought to support them. I was also unable to offer such justifications. For the life of me, I had no idea what they were discussing. I wanted them to know the truth about why Chloe had requested them to push me out and recognize that they had been duped, and they were right about that. So I urged them to elaborate, and they said they had assumed I had definitely read out the letter. But after that, everything went terribly wrong. It seems that they have come to feel that my intention to inform them about the manipulation was solely to allow them to cut Chloe out of their lives. After that, I would be open to mending our friendship and possibly lending a hand again in the future. After they retired, I was genuinely perplexed because I had made no indication at all about it. And if they had begun to believe such a thing, that was all their fault and not mine. When I told them that I hadn't given them any cues, my parents became enraged with me and demanded that I make good on my commitment to support them in the future should they need it. They feared they had not saved enough for their own retirement because it seemed they had been spending a lot of money on helping Chloe raise her son and pay the bills. They were furious that I was refusing to assist them since they were unable to travel back and had to rely on their other daughter. I'm so sick of my family right now that I'm not even sure what's wrong with them. But it was ridiculous that I decided to hang up on them while they were talking about how they expected me to help them out. I also blocked that number and decided not to accept any calls from numbers I don't recognize. I might even install some apps to help me locate unrecognized phone numbers. Simply said, I don't want to be accessible to them. I've also discussed it with my grandparents, and they agree that I'm right to entirely cut them out of my life and deny them access. Since I opened the door the other day, everything in my personal life has essentially become worse. It feels like they're stuck to me and won't go away. So I guess I should have avoided opening the door to my apartment altogether. That would have saved me a lot of hassle. Update 3. I felt compelled to relay the funniest incident that happened today. My parents haven't gotten in touch with me in the past 2 weeks, and happily they stopped trying when I blocked them, with the exception of an email they sent 2 days after I blocked them, stating that Chloe would still be completely cut out of their lives, if and only if I swear to look after them going forward. To be honest, I find it really sad that they are willing to remove her from their lives, since it proves beyond a shadow of a doubt that they are unfaithful to any of their children. They are all 3 terrible parents. Therefore, I can't say that my actions today make me feel awful. They are all terrible parents. Nevertheless, I had been somewhat busy and hadn't gotten in touch with them for the past 2 weeks. However, this morning at about 8 in the morning, as I was checking my emails, I noticed that I had one from Chloe. When she said that she was willing to forgive me for what I had said about how all of this was her fault, and that she had earned this since she understood it was coming from a place of bitterness and hatred. She was being quite condescending and haughty. She was surrounded by love, including her friends and family, so even though I had not apologized for anything, she was still able to find forgiveness for me in her heart. No matter who leaves her, she will always have her parents and the people who loved her. All I could do was feel envious, since I could never have that. She was showing off her support network, which she had expanded to include our parents. Since I'm currently on my way to success, I believe that she was unaware that they had been plotting to cut her off in order to gain my favor. It was hilarious because all I had to do to demonstrate to her how much her parents loved her was to take a screenshot of the message they had sent me and forward it to her in response to the email she had sent me. It's simply awful that they're so greedy that they see people with marginally better lifestyles than themselves, even though I'm quite sure if you put all of their money together, they could make ends meet and have no excuse to be acting this way. They believe that they must share in it. It was my grandparents at first. They are intelligent enough to handle their wealth since they are quite well off. I'm doing better than my sister, so it's mine now. I believe they should be aware of how clearly evident it is that none of them value one another. Fourth update. Hello to all of you. A lot of you asked for an update on my family's predicament. Although I no longer interact with them, I understand that there is currently a ruckus in the family. In the message I sent, I revealed that my parents were prepared to cut Chloe out of their lives, as long as I assured them I would support them going forward, essentially destroyed any chance of a relationship between them. As an idiot, Chloe posted a lengthy remark about it on social media, claiming that she had always trusted the wrong people. However, since her parents were her parents, it seems that she had never anticipated their outcomes to be the same. She wasn't incorrect in my opinion to say that. Although no one anticipates their parents to behave in this manner, I believe she should have anticipated it after they expelled me. In response to their posts, they have no loyalty to anyone but themselves. In a subsequent post, my parents claimed that she had been stealing from them for the previous few years, and that they had been questionlessly supportive of her. However, everything needs to have an end. She cannot continue to rely on her parents for her entire life. They are currently embroiled in a social media feud, and a lot of drama surrounds them, both of which are bad. Press for her floral shop. She has a reputation to consider, but she doesn't even seem to care that much. At least my parents are still retired. Her entire concern is getting even with her parents, so I'm not even shocked that she can't succeed. She has always focused primarily on the short-term objectives, and that is how she is now. I am enjoying the drama that is developing with my grandparents while we sit back, despite the fact that I have nothing to do with it at all at this point. They both know that if I get involved, it will reflect poorly on all three of them, which is probably why they have both had the wisdom to keep me out of their articles. In any case, I don't even want to address any of this and provide them with the attention they currently need. Though it's quite clear to me that all they want is sympathy, nobody in our family has fallen for it thus far. Because of the way they behave, people are actually kind of avoiding them, and it's so dumb that they are unaware that the opposite of what they intended to happen is happening with their own behaviors. Well, anything. Right now, I consider my life to be quite amazing, and that's all that counts to me.